It's June 8th, 5 o'clock PM. We are in the council chambers. We're here for a special meeting of the Economic Development Authority. We will start with roll call.
Bevins.
Here.
Beezer. Here. Kirsch. O'Day.
Here.
Yeager.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Here, next up is an approval or amendment of the agenda. Is there an approval?
Move to approve, Bevins. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. The only business we have is to determine the criteria for the Deed Main Street Revitalization Program. I think you all saw, let's show that Marie is here now. We just did a roll call, haven't gotten to the business yet, Marie, but you've all read the memo. You've hopefully reviewed the Rochester app. What we're first order of business we want to do tonight is create the criteria. So there were some options, some ideas in the memo of what increased business ownership by minorities, women, veterans, or other protected class of entrepreneurs, increase in tax base, increase in jobs, increase in affordable housing, childcare slots, support for small business, workforce development, maximize or leverage private investment in our designated corridor, or redevelopment of anchor institutions. I think those are all good recommendations. Is there anything anybody wants to add? What I think we'll do is just kind of go across the board. We'll all pick our two favorites or whatever, and whatever has the most votes, that'll be our three criteria we'll go forward with. If anybody has anything to add. Mike?
I don't know if these are the ones that we want to use for sure. I mean, these are examples. Is this what they want us to use? Are they suggesting that? Or we're
No,
just
if you have
coming up
something
with
you want to add, or you think something's better than these, please propose them.
So at the last meeting, I said, and you guys can feel free to add, I said, what we need is childcare, we need housing, and not necessarily low-income housing. We need housing in general. And the third thing I would put on there, if I had to list three, is going to be blight. If we can put money towards helping fix blight in this whole area, whether it's 210 downtown, if it's facade improvements, I'm game for that. So those are my three.
So your three votes, childcare, housing, blight reduction. Kelly, do you have three?
I have no different three or any that are not on that list. I like it the way it is.
Mike's three, or Mike's three with the list that,
With
from the memo?
included with the list from the memo.
Okay. Marie, anything to add? Any?
No, just, yeah, in terms of like the blight, I guess I would want it to focus on, since it is called the Main Street Revitalization Program, that we're focusing on our Main Street and doing something to, again, like facade improvement or something related to just improving the visual. I don't know if that's signage or facade or something, but something along those lines.
So we'll add that, signage, facade improvements. Signage.
Mr. Chair, I thought of something
Kelly?
that's maybe not related to what they can spend the money on, but it might just be more of a question. But I've always felt that there's more enthusiasm if you have an input yourself. Is there anything in there, and I apologize if I missed this, regarding any kind of personal input or match, or is it just a gift?
The grant only covers 30% of eligible expenses, so the
Okay,
private
so
party
there-
will be putting 70% into the
Perfect.
project.
Yep, thank you.
And that's where the maximum leverage of
Yep,
goes, because maybe we can get a project that's going to be paying 80-85%. They require a smaller grant. I
Right.
think that's
okay, thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
Tony.
I like housing, childcare, and small business.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no objections to the housing, childcare, small business. Mine is probably more closely tied to the blight, but perhaps a subsection: landscaping, lighting, parking, and green spaces.
Yes, he said it exactly what I should have said when, eloquently described.
Like more parking, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm hoping if we could increase the percentage of parking, I'd go decrease parking, Mr.
Okay, I was thinking, my first thing that pops into my head when somebody says parking is not downtown, because that's what we like to talk about all the time. But if I think of the East Brainerd Mall and Thrifty White, there's parking for every man, woman, and child. you know, in those two spots, and they're always empty. Right?
Yeah, and I don't want to pigeon myself by saying decrease only, but a more forward-thinking, more intelligent design of parking, screening, and so forth.
Make it more
A
site.
more purposeful intent, yes.
Right.
Okay, so we've got some added, we had some proposed by staff. How many are we trying to distill this down to, Jennifer, as far as recommendations for the committee to look at?
So when Don Hickman had talked about this, it was narrowing it down to a few and then weighting those. So it would be easier to allocate the funds if you had fewer items that were weighted.
Okay, so let's go back around and let's all pick 3 based on what we have here in childcare, housing, blight reduction, signage, facade, small business, landscaping, lighting, parking, green spaces.
Can I clarify on my, can I speak?
Yeah, you can clarify what you have.
My focus when it was support of small business, that could include the blight because a small business probably doesn't have the funds to fix their facade. So to me, they could be combined into one small business to help with blight, like those items. So, but not exclusive.
Right, not exclusive to just blight, but, you know, a small business can also provide childcare. There's gonna be a lot of overlap, I think. So we're just gonna all go through, give 3, and see what ends up at the top and see if we wanna weight that or see how it massages. Mike, your 3 are childcare, housing, blight.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Tony. I guess it's small business. If you leave that, you can cover a lot of bases. If you just say small business, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm asking Jennifer, do they want us to be more specific or not? But I think the bigger net that you cast, you're going to miss less projects. So there's going to be more applicants if you just say small business. But are they going to catch on to what we're doing here or not? And what is small business? Does that cap at
Like 500.
25 employees or, yeah? I mean, I guess I lean towards leaving it as small business, but if it has some direction as far as small business retention.
I believe small business is 50 employees and under. Is that correct, Jennifer?
For
I would have-
Obamacare it is, yeah.
I believe it's around 50 and under.
I would have to double check on these specific guidelines.
So Mike,
Fine with small business. 'cause I
childcare,
think-
housing, small business?
Yeah.
Kelly?
I'd pick anything that you can't make, that you need to spend money on, but you can't get a return. So I'd whack childcare, because if you can't make money in childcare right now, there's lines of people who want their kids to go into childcare. You're in the wrong business, because childcare is a money-making business right now. If you're not, same thing with affordable housing. If you can't build houses right now and make money at it, you shouldn't be applying for government money. It should be stuff like that you can't, it's gonna cost you money, that you can't get a return. The Gregory Park fountain, I only throw that one out because that's a personal one of mine. It's gonna cost $1 million. If you think it's gonna cost 500 grand, you don't know what things cost these days. And you can wait for a grant all day long and you just got one. I think Kevin Yeager's more right on stuff that you can see that makes people more appreciative of the community.
So we're looking at,
I don't know what you call it, landscaping?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, if I may just ask a global question here on the real objective of what we're trying to do with this money. Are we trying to foster new business? Are we trying to encourage existing businesses to expand? Or are we trying to make our city look different with the businesses that we have? Because I think each one of those comes with a different mindset on what we should be weighing towards, or, maybe they're all 3 together. Maybe somebody can help me just, objective.
That's what we're deciding right now. What is the objective? They have the criteria that the money can be spent on from a, whatever deed says, but then we're trying to narrow it down to how do we want it spent in Brainerd.
Understood. Okay, that helps a lot.
So Kelly, you like the landscaping, blight reduction,
Yep,
signage, facade improvements?
sure. Yep.
Mike, you have something to add?
Well, I just want to clarify, I'll just be honest, the reason I say housing is because I know of a large project that could take almost all of this funding as even less than 30% of what it's wanting to do, the 805 or whatever what it's called, 805. And we also know that the YMCA is trying to make a new child care center out of an old funeral home, and that could also take a large chunk of money. So maybe we also decide, are those things that we want to put money towards, or would we rather focus on the visual blight issues with businesses?
Well, I think, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, Don does not want us to identify projects at this time. He wants us to identify goals.
That is
So
correct.
if your project, if you want to fund a project at the YMCA right now, you need to pretend that your goal is to expand childcare. And then that's a vote for the YMCA getting money.
Yes,
That's what we're doing right here.
yeah. Well, I told you why,
Yeah.
and I think that should be addressed. I think this board should be able to talk about that and say whether or not you think a ton of money should go to one project or a couple projects, or does this money, is it better spent spread out? So when we go to decide, is housing one of the top three, is childcare one of the top three, that's what you need to have in mind. That's all.
That is all true. Marie, your top three.
I like Rochester's, the way they did it, because they have like 4 bullet points, and I feel like it's targeted enough that you're gonna get applicants that are applying towards things that the Main Street revitalization is targeting, but it's broad enough that we're not limiting ourselves and restricting. So like, for example, they put landscaping, streetscaping, and related site amenities, so I feel like everything.
We call that landscaping, lighting, parking, green spaces.
Right, so but then they also have, repair or renovation of real property, including expansions and additions, so that could include like a childcare facility, for example. I just am worried, like, I don't wanna have the criteria be so specific that I feel like the selection committee can be making more of those decisions, and I'd rather see applicants applying and not being limited by the criteria we set. So I guess I like the way Rochester laid it out. I feel like it has 4 pretty specific buckets, but still can capture the types of projects that we've been discussing, but don't wanna like make those criteria so specific that we're limiting applicants. If that makes sense.
So we're trying to get to that by going through and seeing what we want out of these, and then we're going to have 4 bullet points like that of what our priorities are.
So can I speak to her?
Yeah.
I agree with you. This is, from what I understand, this is just how the subcommittee is going to rank once they have these generic answers. They're going to say, oh, well, our top one is childcare. That if you're childcare, you're bumped up higher on the list than someone who wants to do workforce development. Like, it's just for ranking and then further review upon that. Is that correct?
That's how I understand it.
Okay.
Is there something else, Jennifer?
That's how I understand it as well. So you will determine your criteria on what you want. You're going to release an application, and people are going to be able to apply under whatever criteria you define. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you're defining childcare, housing, and landscaping. You will weight those criteria, and then you will submit an application or release an application. People will check a box as to which category they're in, and then, as I understand it, the EDA would create a subcommittee who would review those applications and then submit a recommendation to the full EDA board. So, for example, maybe you want to weight housing at 70% and blight at 20 and landscaping at 10. So that was what, when Don was here, he was really talking about how that's weighted. The other thing that I would point out, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Floor is yours.
the other thing is that if you look at that memo, the grant funds can be used for things like repair and renovation, building construction, landscaping and streetscaping, demolition, pre-design, engineering, non-municipal infrastructure. And then whatever category you decide is your criteria, those items would be eligible. So if you're talking about housing, that would fall under building construction. The funds could be used for housing, and it meets the building construction criteria, or eligible activity.
Thank you. Does that clarify anything?
I
Maria?
guess I'm hearing two different things. So there's like kind of the broad categories that we want it to fall under, and then there's like criteria in terms of like how we're weighting the applicants. But if we say like we want to prioritize like childcare or housing, we can weight those higher or give those types of projects more weight, but we can still allow anybody to apply. We would just not maybe weight those projects.
Correct. Don also mentioned on Monday night that he does not expect to find enough eligible projects in round one to spend the $4.5+ million they have. So even if it's lower ranking on the list, people could still apply, and they still may end up getting funded because there may not be enough applications region-wide. But if we prioritize childcare at 80%, any childcare application is going to be on the top of the list of funded with Brainerd's dollars. But we're not quite to the percentage yet. We're just trying to figure out what like our top 4 are right now. So if you have a vote on those 3 of the things we've been talking about, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know, are we calling it landscaping and,
Landscaping, lighting, parking, green spaces.
yeah, that one.
Got a vote there. You got 2 other votes?
Housing and childcare, but I would prioritize the blight one, I guess, over the other 2.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Tony?
I would like housing, childcare, and small business just because we need our town to grow, and those are the 3 things that will help our town grow and be prosperous.
Kevin?
Housing, landscaping, revitalization.
Okay, and I say housing, and I say landscaping, and I say small business. So let's total these up. So our top vote getter was housing with 5 votes. Second was landscaping, lighting, parking, green spaces with 4. And then both small businesses and childcare got 3. So those seem like a good top 4.
Again, anyone can apply, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to fit these, so.
I'm okay with 4.
You're okay with those 4? Is anybody not okay with those 4? We got the landscaping, small business, housing, and childcare. So now we want to weight them somehow.
You did by voting.
So we have 5 for housing, that's weighted the most. Then 4 for landscaping, lighting, parking, green spaces, second most. And then the third most is small business and childcare. Do we want to put percentages to that, or is it just 5 votes, 4 votes, 3 and 3? You can figure out what that percentage is.
I think it's, yeah, I mean,
That's what I would do.
yeah,
My only,
self-explanatory.
the only thing is, since it is a Main Street revitalization, if somebody applies and it's housing that's maybe not in our like downtown core area, do we prioritize that lower than like a project where they're looking to do housing kind of more in a targeted
Mr. Chair,
area?
the area is beyond Main Street, correct? It encompasses,
It's the river to rail, so you can
River
buy
to
like
rail,
a green
yeah.
lot on Pine Street by the railroad yard, and that would be in the district.
it's not just 210 9th,
Yeah.
8th, yeah, right?
No, you could be in Pine Street Southeast, buy an empty lot and
Right.
submit for housing, and according to this, would be ranked the highest. So are we going for multifamily housing, downtown housing? Do we want to specify what this housing is?
I think, Mr. Chair, I think anything that would increase housing the most would be prioritized over the ones that would be,
Density.
yeah, it's density.
Okay, is everybody who voted housing okay with that? Maximize housing density?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody else want to talk about our priorities anymore? Is that enough, Jennifer? Do we need, you want us to get any more detailed into this?
No, I think that's plenty, and I think what we can do is kind of develop some guidelines, talk about it in the subcommittee, and then bring something back to the EDA for you to consider. I think this gives us the framework.
Excellent, so that gets done with action item number 1. Action, do you want a motion to adopt that criteria?
Sure.
Okay, I'm looking.
Motion Evans to adopt it as presented.
Second, Beazer.
We have a motion and a second to adopt with 5 points, maximize housing density, 4 points, landscape, lighting, parking, green space, And 3 points, both small business and childcare, and the actual language to be worked out as the application is developed. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is to appoint a 5-member subcommittee. I have talked to 5 people who are interested, and I'd like to appoint, or I'd like the EDA to appoint, if they would, Commissioner Kurtz, Commissioner Yeager, Bruce Buxton, Mayor Bedeau, and Mary Devine Johnson to the committee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would just like to say the reasoning is Mayor Bedeau represents the city, Bruce Buxton represents the River to Rail Group, Marie Kirsch represents Destination Downtown, Kevin Yeager represents the EDA among pretty much every other committee in Brainerd, and then Mary Devine Johnson is on the Visit Brainerd Board of Directors, who focuses on downtown development too. So I think it's a lot of downtown-focused people and organizations put on this committee, and I think they'll do a good
There's
job.
only one goober, so
My wife?
I'm not saying.
I think he's here.
All right. Yeah, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And then the next up is to authorize Bladec to develop the guidelines and application and provide the overall administration of the grant program with final decision-making authority to be made by the Economic Development Authority.
I have a question. For the information of this grant opportunity and the housing of the form, is that going to be on Bladec's website or the city's website?
It'll be on the city's, probably both. So I guess, Jennifer, can you explain this to us? It was told to us by Don that we would have, that the EDA would be the decision-making authority, but this looks like we're giving Bladec the decision-making authority.
The
Overall
decision-
administration just seems like it's overall administration.
The
It's a
decision-making.
pretty big word.
The decision-making would be the EDA. That is the decision-making body.
Okay, so I think I would like on this action number 3, that doesn't mention anything about the EDA having any authority to do anything, but Bladec being the overall administrator, I would like to add language where, with also the Brainerd EDA being the final decision.
I'd call that administration of the grant application program with final decision-making by the Brainerd EDA.
So-
So insert the word grant, the application process,
Application program instead of the grant program.
instead of the grant program.
Okay.
Grant application program and the EDA to determine the final decision, is the final decision on the applicant.
It's a motion.
That's a motion.
I'll second Yeager.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
I just want to make sure, so if they're doing the administration of the application process, does that still include like, helping distribute the checks and all that kind of follow-up stuff? And like if there's criteria that the applicants or the recipients need to submit, like is that all covered under that as well?
I think the EDA would distribute the checks.
Wouldn't the money come to the city of Brainerd as the grant recipient, and the city of Brainerd would cut a check?
Personally, I think Gabe Johnson should ride and deliver them on a unicycle.
Well, I just know there's a lot of work on the back end, like once they give the grant, there's a lot of stuff to have to administer, and we just want to make sure Bladec's aware that that's included in this, or I want to clarify that it's included in this.
They're getting paid for all they'll do as much work as they.
All right.
Jennifer?
The Initiative Foundation would issue the checks.
Oh,
The
so-
checks would come from the Initiative Foundation.
So it doesn't even come to Brainerd or Bladec?
The EDA is the decision-making body, and then those recommendations, or those awards would go to the Initiative Foundation, who would then in turn cut the checks.
And then I'm assuming there'll be some like follow-up reporting that the grant recipients need to supply to show that they're using the funds appropriately. Who's collecting that? Is that Initiative Foundation?
Yeah.
Us, or Bladec?
Mr. Chair? And I think a part of the challenge of this is the Initiative Foundation is also working on their documents at the same time that we're working on our criteria and also our application. So these two things are kind of happening concurrently. So waiting to hear back from the Initiative Foundation on their guidelines.
Okay, and then I think, I guess this wasn't part of the motion, but just as direction, general direction to staff, we all like this Rochester application, right? If Bladec comes up with something like that, we would all.
Yep. I only have one thing that I would like clarification on here, just because the timing is very short, that in the application, we should probably state, can it be done by that end date, whatever that end date, which we're getting clarification
All right,
on.
when we get the clarification on what completed in 36 months is, let's have a date on the application.
Yes, just so everyone's fully aware of when things have to be complete, because it is a struggle out there. I'll just let you know right now with every trade.
Are they going to come back with an application for approval, or is this motion just giving them the,
Mr. Chair, the intent here is they're going to draft an application and all of that. They'll work with the subcommittee. That will come back to the EDA for your authorization. Tyler Glenn was not able to be here tonight. He did send an email and he had some thoughts on the application, so.
so it'll come back for approval? or
Okay.
this- From the subcommittee and Bladek working together? Any other questions? Hearing none, we have a motion. Let's vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Any other business for us to conduct tonight, Jennifer?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and just a heads up to my fellow EDA members, the city council promoted James Kramvik from assistant planner to full-time community development director this week. So welcome, James, our community development director, to your first EDA meeting.
Yes, thank you very much. Very excited for the opportunity going forward here and continue to work with the EDA.
All right, anything else?
We're looking for an assistant planner.
Yeah, if you're going assistant planner.
And James needs a new plaque.
Yeah.
I just
Hey, with
noticed.
that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.